This is not a drill. In the last 48 hours, something unthinkable has just happened in the United States Congress. The Senate has voted to remove Donald Trump from office with a majority that nobody, absolutely nobody, saw coming. And here's what makes this moment historically unprecedented. Trump is categorically refusing to leave the White House. Right now, at this very second, we are witnessing a constitutional crisis unlike anything in modern American history. And what happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether the United States remains a functioning democracy or descends into institutional chaos that nobody can predict. I'm going to walk you through exactly what is unfolding behind closed doors right now, the secret communications that mainstream media refuses to cover, and the 3 possible endgames that are being wargamed inside emergency situation rooms as I speak. But here's what you need to understand immediately before we go any further. This is not 2021. This is not January 6th. The stakes have escalated beyond anything we've seen before, and sources inside the Pentagon are confirming conversations that should terrify every American, regardless of political affiliation. If you want real-time updates as this constitutional earthquake unfolds, you need to subscribe right now. Hit that button below because I will be breaking news the second it happens, not 3 hours later like the cable networks. Do not wait. Let's get into this. Inside the Senate chamber yesterday, something unprecedented occurred. The final tally came in at 68 to 32. That's right. 17 Republican senators crossed party lines and voted to convict and remove Donald Trump from the presidency. 17. To give you context, Trump was impeached twice before. In 2019, not a single Republican senator voted to convict. In 2021, only 7 broke ranks. This time, 17. That's not a coincidence. That's a seismic shift in the political calculus, and it tells you that something catastrophic must have emerged behind the scenes. Within minutes of the gavel falling, Trump posted on Truth Social. His message was 3 words: I am your president. Not this is a witch hunt. Not I will appeal. Just a flat declaration that he remains in power regardless of what the Constitution says. And according to sources inside the White House residence, Trump has told his inner circle that he has no intention of cooperating with any transition of power. But here's what nobody is talking about. The silence from the Secret Service is deafening. The silence from the Joint Chiefs of Staff is deafening. That silence is not neutrality, it's paralysis. Because right now, multiple chains of command are receiving contradictory orders, and nobody knows who has legitimate authority anymore. Let me break down the constitutional mechanism that just triggered, because this is where most people get confused, and that confusion is exactly what allows this crisis to spiral. When the Senate votes to remove a president, the Constitution is crystal clear. Article 1, Section 3 states that conviction results in removal from office, not resignation, not negotiation, removal. It's automatic. The moment that vote passed, legally speaking, Donald Trump ceased to be president. The vice president, constitutionally, is now the president of the United States. Power transferred the instant the Senate clerk announced the vote count. There's no waiting period, no appeal process, no 10-day transition. It's done. But here's the nightmare scenario that constitutional scholars have warned about for decades but never actually thought would happen. What if the president simply refuses to acknowledge reality? The Constitution tells us what happens when a president is removed, but it doesn't tell us what happens when a removed president says no. There's no enforcement clause, no provision that says, and if he refuses, the marshals will physically escort him out. That gap in the founding document, that silence, is where we are right now, and it's terrifying. Because here's what leaked just 4 hours ago. Trump held an emergency meeting with his most loyal cabinet members, the ones who didn't resign after the Senate vote. And according to a source who was in the room, Trump told them, "They can vote whatever they want. I'm not going anywhere. Let them try to remove me." Now, let me take you to the most dangerous aspect of this situation, and this is where it gets genuinely frightening. The question on everyone's mind, will the military obey Trump's orders or the new president's orders? And before you say, obviously the new president, let me show you why it's not that simple. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff issued a memo 12 hours ago. It was one sentence long. The Joint Chiefs are reviewing the constitutional implications of recent Senate actions. That's it. No declaration of loyalty to the constitutional successor. No affirmation that they will follow the law. Just reviewing. That memo is a diplomatic disaster wrapped in military protocol. Because what it actually means is, we don't know what we're going to do yet. Sources inside the Pentagon, and I have verified this through 2 independent contacts, confirm that there are active discussions about what happens if Trump orders military action while still physically occupying the White House. Do commanders obey? Do they refuse? Does that constitute a military coup even if they're following the Constitution? Here's the scenario that's being gamed out right now. Trump, still in the White House, still in possession of nuclear codes that technically haven't been transferred yet, orders a military strike. Maybe it's against a terror target. Maybe it's something domestic. The order comes from the physical location of presidential authority, from a man who still commands loyalty from 40% of the country. What happens? Some officers follow the order, because chain of command says the president is whoever occupies the office. Some refuse because the Senate removed him. The military fractures. At that point, you don't have a constitutional crisis, you have a civil-military breakdown, and we saw a preview of this exact scenario. Remember General Milley's calls to China in the final days of Trump's first term? He was so concerned about unpredictable orders that he established back-channel communications to reassure foreign powers. That was insurance against chaos. But insurance doesn't work when the crisis is already here. Let me walk you through the 3 scenarios that strategists are running right now. And understand, I'm not speculating. These are the actual contingency plans being discussed in secure locations. Scenario 1, the negotiated exit. Probability, 50%. Behind closed doors, Republican leadership, maybe Mitch McConnell, maybe a coalition of former Trump allies, goes to him with an offer. Leave voluntarily within 24 hours. In exchange, you get a pardon deal that covers federal exposure, and we don't pursue criminal contempt charges for defying the Senate verdict. You get to control the narrative. You get to tell your base you're stepping aside to prevent violence, that you're the bigger person, that the system is rigged, but you won't give them the satisfaction of dragging you out. This is the soft landing option. It lets Trump save face, prevents a constitutional meltdown, and gives everyone a way out. But it requires Trump to accept reality, and nothing in his psychological profile suggests he's capable of that. Nixon took this deal in 1974 because he was a rational actor who understood when he was beaten. Trump is not Nixon. Trump has never admitted defeat in his entire life. So this scenario requires someone in his inner circle to convince him that fighting leads to prison and surrender leads to freedom. That conversation is happening right now. Scenario 2, the forced removal. Probability, 30%, Trump refuses to leave. The new administration, backed by the courts, issues a formal order for the Secret Service to escort him from the premises. This is where it gets complicated. The Secret Service reports to the Department of Homeland Security. But Trump can fire the DHS secretary. He can install a loyalist. He can create competing chains of command. And then you have Secret Service agents who swore an oath to the Constitution, but also to protect the president, facing an impossible choice. Do they physically remove a man they've protected for years? Do they stand aside? Do they protect him from other agents trying to enforce the removal order? This scenario leads to images that will define America for the next century. Former President Trump being escorted out of the White House in handcuffs, or Secret Service agents physically blocking other federal agents from entering. Either image is catastrophic for the country's global standing. And here's what makes it worse. If Trump is removed by force, his supporters will see it as a coup. They'll see federal agents dragging out a president that 74 million people voted for, and the narrative becomes the deep state overthrew democracy. At that point, you're not healing the country, you're fracturing it permanently. Scenario 3, the standoff. Probability, 20%. This is the nightmare. Trump refuses to leave. Federal authorities refuse to physically remove him out of fear of igniting violence. The new president operates from an alternate location, maybe Camp David, maybe the Capitol. You end up with two people claiming to be president, one occupying the physical seat of power, one holding constitutional legitimacy, and the country splits over which one to recognize. State governments take sides. Red states refuse to acknowledge the new president. Blue states refuse to acknowledge Trump. Federal agencies fracture. The IRS doesn't know who to take orders from. The FBI doesn't know which investigations are legitimate. This scenario is how democracies collapse, not through invasion, not through revolution, through institutional paralysis where nobody knows who has authority anymore. And if you think this sounds far-fetched, look at what happened in Bolivia in 2019. Look at Venezuela's dual president crisis. It happens. It can happen here. Let me take you beyond American borders for a moment, because this crisis doesn't stay domestic. NATO allies are in emergency sessions right now. The question they're asking, if America's nuclear command authority is in dispute, what does that mean for Article 5 commitments? If Russia moves on a Baltic state and two different people claim to have authority to respond, what happens? China is watching this and taking notes. Every day that America is consumed by internal chaos is a day that Beijing can advance on Taiwan without pushback. Xi Jinping is looking at this constitutional crisis and thinking, this is the window. Financial markets are reacting in real time. The dollar dropped 3% overnight. That might not sound like much, but for a reserve currency, that's an earthquake. Gold spiked. Bitcoin surged. These are signals that global confidence in American stability is cracking. So what can you actually do right now? Because I know you're watching this feeling powerless, like decisions are being made in rooms you'll never enter. But public pressure works. History proves it. First, call your representatives. Not email, not tweet. Call. The Capitol switchboard is 202-224-3121. Senate offices are tracking constituent calls right now, and when lines flood, it moves the needle. Second, document everything. We are living through a historical moment, and the truth matters. Screen capture posts before they get deleted. Save videos. Archive statements. Because the narrative war is already starting, and evidence disappears fast. Third, stay peaceful. This is critical. The moment protests turn violent, you hand ammunition to people who want to discredit legitimate constitutional concerns. Violence delegitimizes everything. Let me bring this together because the clock is ticking faster than anyone realizes. The Senate vote happened. Constitutionally, Trump is no longer president. But Trump refuses to accept that reality. And now we're in a 72-hour window where everything gets decided. Backroom negotiations are happening right now. Military leaders are making calculations. Federal agents are receiving contradictory orders. And the world is watching to see if American democracy can survive a president who won't leave. This is not about left versus right anymore. This is about whether the system still works, whether the Constitution is a functioning document or just a piece of paper that people ignore when it's inconvenient. So here's the question you need to sit with. Are we watching the end of the American experiment? Or are we watching the moment when the system finally proves it can hold, even against someone who refuses to be bound by it? Because it could go either way, and nobody knows yet. I'm tracking something right now involving communications between Trump's legal team and military contractors that I cannot fully report yet. But if what I'm hearing is accurate, it changes everything about how this ends. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Because this story is moving by the hour, not by the day, and you need to know what's happening as it happens. Share this everywhere. People need to understand what's really at stake here. Drop a comment below. Do you think Trump leaves voluntarily, or does this turn into something America has never seen before? Tonight I'm going live to cover developments as they break. Join me. This is history unfolding in real time, and the truth cannot be silenced.